Look, I got 5 boys. I'm used to people saying something that's not always true, but just keep on repeating it and ultimately hoping I'll believe it. But that is not the case.
Now, Governor Romney's proposal that he's been promoting for 18 months calls for a $5 trillion tax cut on top of $2 trillion of additional spending for our military.
The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit.
I want to lower spending and encourage economic growth at the same time. What things would I cut from spending? Well, first of all, I will eliminate all programs by this test if they don't pass it. Is the program so critical it's worth borrowing money from China to pay for it? And if not, I'll get rid of it. Obamacare's on my list. I apologize, Mr. President. I use that term with all respect.
I like it.
Good. Okay, good. So I'll get rid of that.
Now, if you get rid of President Obama's health care law, what are you going to do with it?
Well, we do provide care for people who don't have insurance. People, if someone has a heart attack, they don't sit in their apartment and die. We pick them up in an ambulance and take them to the hospital.
Look, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to have millions and millions of people who have no health insurance and yet who can go to the emergency room and get entirely free care for which they have no responsibility, particularly if they're people who have sufficient means.
When they show up at the hospital, they get care. They get free care paid for by you and me.
Right.
If that's not a form of socialism, I don't know what is.
I'm sorry, Jim. I'm going to stop the subsidy to PBS. I'm going to stop other things. I like PBS. I love Big Bird. I actually like you too. But I'm not going to keep on spending money on things to borrow money from China to pay for it. That's number one. Number two, I'll take programs that are currently good programs, but I think could be run more efficiently at the state level and send them to the state.
Don't make me do stuff.
Number three, I'll make government more efficient and to cut back the number of employees, combine some agencies and departments. My cutbacks will be done through attrition, by the way.
This turkey is totally brain dead. Business is business. You keep on buying. Dilute the son of a bitch.
It's not a question of enough, pal. It's a zero-sum game. Somebody wins, somebody loses.
Well, in my book, you either do it right or you get eliminated.
It also means that if you don't like what they do, you can fire them. I like being able to fire people who provide services to me.
Capitalism at its finest. Money never sleeps.
I know what it takes to get small business growing, but it's going to take a different path. Not the one we've been on, not the one the president describes as a top-down cut taxes for the rich. That's not what I'm going to do.
There are 47% of the people who will vote for the president no matter what. All right, there are 47% who are with him, who are dependent upon government, who believe that they're victims, who believe that government has a responsibility to care for them, who believe that they're entitled to health care, to food, to housing, to you name it. But it's an entitlement, and the government should give it to them. And they will vote for this president no matter what. And I mean, the president starts off with 48, 49, 40, he starts off with a huge number. These are people who pay no income tax. 47% of Americans pay no income tax. So our message of low taxes doesn't connect. He'll be out there talking about tax cuts for the rich. I mean, that's what they sell every 4 years. And so my job is not to worry about those people. I'll never convince them they should take personal responsibility and care for their lives. What I have to do is convince the 5 to 10% in the Senate that are independent, that are thoughtful, that look at voting one way or the other, depending upon, in some cases, emotion, whether they like the guy or not.
But why do you need to wreck this company? Because it's wreckable, all right? I want every orifice in this fucking body flowing red. I'm gonna make you rich, Bud Fox. Now, I am not a destroyer of companies. I am a liberator of them.
This is obviously a very tender topic. I've had the occasion over the last couple of years of meeting people across the country. I was in Dayton, Ohio, and a woman grabbed my arm and she said, "I've been out of work since May. Can you help me?" Ann yesterday was at a rally in Denver, and a woman came up to her with a baby in her arms and said, "Ann, my husband has had 4 jobs in 3 years, part-time jobs. He's lost his most recent job, and we've now just lost our home. Can you help us?" I'd like to clear up the record and go through piece by piece. First of all, I don't have a $5 trillion tax cut. I don't have a tax cut. of the scale that you're talking about. My view is that we ought to provide tax relief to people in the middle class. But I'm not going to reduce the share of taxes paid by high-income people. High-income people are doing just fine in this economy. They'll do fine whether you're president or I am. The people who are having the hard time right now are middle-income Americans.
We should lower taxes for the very highest income people.
We need to help Italy and help Europe. We don't have to decide between the two because they go together.
Americans are lazy. We have lost our inventiveness.
When a corporation is profitable, that's a bad thing.
Take from some people and give to the others. Sometimes I just don't understand America.
Do exactly what Ron Paul said.
Also going to limit deductions and exemptions, particularly for people at the high end, because I want to keep the current progressivity in the code. There should be no tax reduction for high-income people.
No tax reductions for high-end people. He wants the income tax to be progressive. Really? But of course, he reminded us of this part of his plan as well.
Well, they'd be the current rates less 20%. So the top rate, for instance, would go from 35 to 28.
Oh, it would. So that would be a giant reduction in rates for the very, very rich. Now, would it be offset by the deductions? Well, one of the largest deductions is, for example, the home mortgage deduction. So let's do some quick math here, which is always fun on the Young Turks. So if you've got $1 million house and $1 million income, you're rich, right? The kind of people that Romney's talking about, saying he would not give them a break, right? So off of your $1 million income, you get to minus $40,000 in deductions because of your home mortgage. So that gives you a new income of $960,000. And that would lead to a tax rate of about $336,000. Now that's the current plan, okay? Now Mitt Romney says, don't worry, under my plan, the rich are gonna pay the same amount of taxes. Well, let's find out. So you got $1,000 income, well, you're taxed at 28% instead of 35%. So your taxes wind up being $280,000 instead of what they would be now. So what's your savings? Even when you take away the home mortgage deduction, $56,000. Now, if I lost you on the math, God bless your heart, you're not alone. But the bottom line on that is, under Mitt Romney's plan, if you've got $1 million house and you're making $1 million in income, you actually save $56,000 in taxes, even when he takes away the largest of the deductions. If he took away all of your deductions, you would still save tens of thousands of dollars. In fact, the $56,000 is larger than what the average American makes in a year. And that's the amount they save if they're just a millionaire. Now, what if they were making $10 million a year? Now, look at the advantage Mitt Romney gives them then. Current law, they'd be paying $3,486,000 in taxes. Under the Romney plan, they'd be paying $2.8 million in taxes. In other words, if you're making $10 million a year, even if he takes away your biggest deduction, your total savings is $686,000. So when Mitt Romney tells you in that interview, hey, listen, don't worry, the rich aren't going to get a big tax cut, it is a preposterous lie. They're going to get anywhere from a really large tax cut to a gigantic tax cut. See, that's the problem with Mitt Romney's numbers and specifics. The minute you break them down, you see how utterly full of crap he is.
Well, for 18 months, he's been running on this tax plan. And now, 5 weeks before the election, he's saying that his big, bold idea is never mind. And the fact is that if you are lowering the rates the way you described, Governor, then it is not possible to come up with enough deductions and loopholes that only affect high-income individuals to avoid either raising the deficit or burdening the middle class. It's math. It's arithmetic. And I believe that the economy works best when middle-class families are getting tax breaks so that they've got some money in their pockets. And those of us who have done extraordinarily well because of this magnificent country that we live in, that we can afford to do a little bit more to make sure we're not blowing up the deficit.
Jim, the president began this segment, so I think I get the last word. So I'm going to take.
You're going to get the first word in the next segment.
Well, but he gets the first word of that segment. I get the last word of that segment. I hope. Let me just make this comment. First of all, let me repeat what I said.
Right.
I'm not in favor of a $5 trillion tax cut. That's not my plan. My plan is not to put in place any tax cut that will add to the deficit.
I I refuse to ask middle-class families to give up their deductions for owning a home or raising their kids just to pay for another millionaire's tax cut. I refuse to ask students to pay more for college or kick children out of Head Start programs to eliminate health insurance for millions of Americans who are poor and elderly or disabled. Also, those with the most can pay less. I'm not going along with that.